One of the reasons why people don't have great messaging, a lot of unheard entrepreneurs just want to fix their messaging, is because they actually don't know what messaging is. And a lot of people have a misconception of what messaging is. And so I'm going to break down in this episode what messaging actually is, some elements you can start to use to get your messaging in place, how to fix your communication. And I'm going to give you some real life stories of how this played out in my life, including an ambulance trip to the emergency room. So if that sounds interesting to you, well, keep on listening. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, messaging. And what we're going to talk about today are some of the messaging elements. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into these, and I'm going to help explain what these are and show them how they're relevant to you and your business and your brand specifically. With that being said, the reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because we have our Master Your Messaging workshop, where I'm spending 3 days diving deep into all of this stuff with you to help you fix your messaging, your communication, your content, your ads, your emails, literally everything inside of your business. So that we have that coming up very, very soon. Now, with that being said, we have a monsoon. So for most of you guys that know, I just moved to Flagstaff, Arizona, mountain town. We're at 7,000 feet of elevation. And the monsoons are not something we are used to or have experienced when living in Southern California, but they're so cool. And I really, really enjoy them. And right now we had one roll in. And so we have crazy thunder and lightning and like a downpour of rain. So hopefully the thunder isn't going to be disruptive to the episode. But if you guys hear these like loud crashes or big bangs or whatever, just know it's thunder. My house is not falling apart. Or if like the house starts shaking or something like that, which did happen. There we go. I don't know if you guys could hear that or not. Hopefully you can't. But anyways, the show must go on. So let's go ahead and dive into this. The very first thing is of when it comes to messaging. And one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about messaging is because messaging is communication. And I believe that if we learn to communicate properly, effectively, we can actually end a lot of suffering in the world. Communication can help shift perspectives. It can help bridge disagreements. It can help acceptance. It can help understand people's viewpoints, bring more compassion to one another. It can also help your sales. It can help your messaging or marketing. It can help so many things. But what we have to realize first is that when we're great with our messaging, it means we're a great communicator. And that is a skill that will improve your life in all areas. But what we have to realize is that messaging is not one video, one line, one sentence, one phrase. And I get a lot of people that come to me and are like, Brandon, what should the bio of my Instagram profile be? And it like literally doesn't matter, because whatever you say in that Instagram profile is not going to make or break the success of your business. And honestly, it's not going to make or break a sale either. Like no one's going to read that and be like, oh, let me sign up. Like, sorry, it doesn't work that way. No one reads your Instagram one-liner and then is just like, cool, I'm going to buy. So none of that matters. And I see people get so hung up on one thing when it comes to messaging. So they also say things like, Brandon, what should my ad be? How does my ad sound? How's the messaging on this? And I'm like, there is no messaging in your ad. It's copy. Like there's words that you're saying, but messaging, in order to understand your messaging, I need to see things throughout your entire brand. I need to see, how are you communicating in an email? Is it the same within an ad, within this funnel, within the sales page? So even to just determine the messaging in a funnel, I need to see every single piece of the funnel. Why? Because every single one of those pieces makes up your messaging. It's not a single video, a single script, a single ad. And the thing is, is that when you start to experience all these things inside of someone's brand, or your audience starts to experience it inside of your brand, that's when the magic starts to happen. That's when things like deeper connection, a desire or a demand to want to work with you starts to form. It starts to get created. And I like to use that whole dating analogy. It's kind of played out a little bit, I guess, but it really is true, is when you start to date someone, they don't usually reveal their entire self to you on the first date, right? So you might see just a glimpse of who they are on the first date. And usually it's like a really good version of who they are. Okay. And then after you date for like a couple months, maybe you start to see, oh, their temper's a little bit short. Or maybe you start to notice that they actually have a bigger heart than you would have thought they did, right? So as you start to date this person and sit inside of this person's ecosystem, so to speak, you start to learn more about them, and you start to automatically have feelings, or in a good way or a bad way, about them. And those start to happen and occur. And it's the same thing as someone sits inside of your brand. As someone sits inside of your ecosystem, they start to experience all of these different elements, things like your beliefs, your values, how you communicate. What are you communicating? What are you all about? What kind of results can you bring? Who do you work with? What values do you have? All of these things start to play a role. And that, my friends, is what messaging is all about. Messaging is all about being very intentional with incorporating elements in your ecosystem and learning how to communicate effectively. So messaging is, what are we saying over time through multiple pieces of content and multiple touch points? What are we saying and how are we saying it? Those things are the most important pieces when it comes to messaging. So we have to understand, before we hop into these elements that I want to talk about today, we have to understand, and you have to understand, that messaging is a long-term game. It's a long-term game because people have to sit there for a certain period of time to fully understand and grasp it and experience all the elements. But it's also a long-term game because you have to discover it yourself. You have to find out what works in your communication, what works with your audience. There's 1.5 million ways to say the same thing. How do you communicate it? And you have to test and tweak and figure out what parts of your message are resonating the most, and how are you communicating the right way, and what data content had the best data on it, and what problems that every time you talk about seem to resonate with people the most. Like, this is all stuff that you start to gain over time, and you start to form really effective messaging. So to really drive this home, I actually have a couple stories for you that I want to kind of go over. But the very first thing that I wanted to talk about is leaning a little bit more into how are we supposed to be communicating. So for those of you who are like, okay, Brandon, I kind of understand, I understand things like the biggest pain points. I have an okay grasp on my messaging and what to say. One of the things that people are not very good with, even if you really understand what it is you do and you feel like you understand your audience very well, people still don't know how to communicate what it is they do to their audience in a way that gets them to buy. So that's the biggest thing, is how do we communicate what we do in a way that gets people to buy? Now, I want to tell you guys a story. This actually happened to me earlier this year. So actually probably just a couple months ago. And it all started around December, November, I believe, of 2021. Are we in 2022? Yeah, we are. Okay. 2021. And my wife had taken a trip with her sister and her mom, and they went to Santa Barbara, and I had the 3 kids. And I remember we sat down to watch a family movie night. It's something we do every Friday night. It's family movie night in the Lucero household. We all snuggle up, PJs, fire on. If it's cold outside, we usually will get like pizza and stuff like that. It's a great time. My wife and I love movies, so we love having that time with our kids. And I was doing the movie night by myself and had the 3 kids, and my stomach started hurting. And I was like, oh, that's really weird, but it wasn't bad. And then it got worse, and then it got worse in a matter of minutes. And I remember thinking, is my appendix? Is there an issue with my appendix? What's going on? And I remember telling myself, like, if this gets any worse, I'm going to have to call my wife. She's going to have to come home. So wait a few more minutes and it passes through. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Back to normal. Well, about 2 months go by and I never had that stomach issue again. I was like, I don't know. That's weird. Whatever. Not going to worry about it. Well, one morning the pain comes back. And mind you, this is happening right before we were supposed to leave to go to Sedona. So obviously, as you guys know, we landed in Flagstaff, Arizona. We know we wanted to be in Arizona somewhere. We just didn't know where. So we're looking around. So we went to Flagstaff, we went to Scottsdale, we went to like Chandler, we went to Prescott, which by the way, most of you might be calling it Prescott. That's a big no-no. You get in trouble with the locals if you call it Prescott. It's Prescott. So we did all the different towns, right? Sedona was next on our list, and I love Sedona. And Sedona was a big deal for me to be able to go there because that's a lot of my friends live there, and all that good stuff. So we're getting ready, and we're like 2 days away. 2 days away, we go to Sedona, and I wake up, and this pain is just so intense, so intense, so intense. And I'm laying on the couch and I'm like, it's not going away. My wife takes the kids to school, comes back, and we're like, okay, we need to go to the emergency room. So we go to the emergency room and they weren't sure what it was. They were like, it could be this, it could be kidney stones. It could be, some kind of infection. It could be blah, blah. And they rattled off a bunch of things that it could be. And so they said, we have to rule out kidney stones. And so they do an ultrasound and they're like, yeah, you don't have any kidney stones, not a kidney stone. It's probably an infection. Take these and you'll be fine. They give me a medication. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a second because I want to analyze and break down what they did. In their diagnosis with me, they were very generalized in what they were telling me. And they never actually told me what the problem was, why it was happening, or how to fix it. Their language was literally like, it's probably this, take this, and let's just see how it does. I'm like, okay. So I take the medication just in case it was whatever they said it was. I can't remember what they said it was, some kind of infection or whatever. So I take the medication. And by the way, I'm not a big medication or Western medicine fan in most cases, in most scenarios. Obviously, there's a need for everything, but so I take it anyways. And we go on our trip to Sedona, but I can still feel there's something wrong with this side. So my side of my stomach. So we get all the way to Sedona. We have an amazing first day. We're there on a Friday, and I wake up Saturday morning and the pain is back and it's even more intense and it's not letting up. It's like, it's one of the most painful things I've ever experienced. It's not letting up. And it doesn't stop. It's just constant. There's no breaks. And I mean, I'm in so much pain, I can't even move. And so my wife comes in and is like, that's it. We're going to the hospital. And I tell her, I'm like, Jacqueline, I literally can't move. I can't move. I can't walk to the car. That's how much pain I'm in. And she goes, okay, we need to call paramedics. So when an ambulance come to the house, my kids were there, and they thought it was cool at first and they got a little bit scared, but anyways, they gave me some pain medication. They got me into the ambulance. They take me to the hospital here in Sedona, and I get to the hospital and the doctor comes in and asks me everything. And he goes, okay, it could be a viral or, it could be the infection like the other doctor told you, but it could be kidney stones. It sounds like kidney stones. And so he goes, we're going to get you an MRI. So we get an MRI, we come back, and he goes, okay, here's what's going on. You have 2 kidney stones. One is 6 millimeters or 4. Is it 4 or 6? I think it was 6 millimeters. And the other one is 10. So I had two kidney stones. And he goes, here's exactly what you need to do. Here's exactly how long it's going to take to play out. Here's exactly what the experience is going to be like. Here's what you need to look for. Here's what you need to do. And this doctor, compared to the other doctor, was very specific. Right? So it was very specific in what was wrong, how many there were, what the sizes were, what my experience in the future is going to be like, how to take care of them, what it's going to be to go through this process. And by the way, for those of you who've never had kidney stones, 10 millimeters is too big to actually pass. So that kidney stone actually stays in there. And so he answers all the questions before I even ask them. He goes, It's 10 millimeters. You're probably going to ask, here's all the options we could do. Here's why we're not going to do this one. Here's why I don't recommend this one, because it's going to be blah, 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 blah. Certain things like he's like, we could break up that 10 millimeter, stone, but then it's going to be a ton of small ones. You're going to have to pass all those small ones. If you want, you can just keep it in there. It's not going to cause you any damage or any health problems, but you're going to go through all this pain in order to get it out there. And it's kind of unnecessary. Or you could do a surgery. So he went through all of the options. Now, the one thing that I want you to grasp from the story is when we look at the two different doctors, I want you to experience or put yourselves into my shoes and look at the experience that I had. I'm in pain, and one doctor who actually misdiagnosed me, but didn't know what the problem was. And they kind of pretended to know what the problem was. Like, obviously they were upfront about it, but they just said, hey, it's probably this, which AKA means I don't actually know. I'm just kind of guessing that this is what the problem is. And I'm going to give you this thing to take just in case. And doctor number 2 goes, here's exactly what's wrong. Here's the sizes. Here's what you're experiencing. Here's what you're going to be experiencing. Here's all the options that you have. Here's why they're good, why they're bad. Here's what I recommend. And he was so specific with everything that my trust in this doctor went through the roof. That doctor could have told me to do 20 jumping jacks, 5 minutes a day, and that will help me pass the kidney stone. And I would have believed him. Why? Because he was so specific in exactly what it was, why it's happening, the different options of kidney stones, the different types of kidney stones are. He was so specific in what he was talking about. And this is the first thing I want you to understand with messaging, is that it's about letting your audience know that you understand them and their specific situation better than anyone else. The more you demonstrate that you understand someone and their situation, the more trust they're going to have in your ability to help them. And that's exactly what happened to me with the doctor. Now, I want to take this one step further. If I have a kidney stone again, or I have stomach pain again, and I have the option of going back to each one of those doctors, who do you think I'm going to go for? Which doctor do you think I'm going to go with? The one who was very generalized or the one who was very specific on my exact situation? Probably the one that was very exact, right? And that's how I look at myself with messaging is I want to be so good and so specific and demonstrate to you that I understand your situation better than anyone else and how to get out of it, that you don't feel a need or a desire to have to go to anybody else. Let's look at what that doctor did. The doctor diagnosed me with specifics and then gave me a solution. And doctor number 1 never did that. And a lot of you unheard entrepreneurs are actually operating as doctor number 1 inside of your business. A lot of you are very generalized in your communication, which doesn't let the other people know that you understand them, their situation, their pain points, their mistakes, their thoughts, their beliefs. You haven't demonstrated any of that. Now, if you've ever gotten the question from your audience of, does this work for my niche, my whatever, that's actually a great opportunity for you to look at how can I be more specific in my communication next time so I don't get these questions. And that's what happens to us inside of our messaging, is that when we talk and I do a workshop and I do these things, or even a podcast episode, I don't want you to guess if what I'm talking about is relevant to you. You should know that by the way I'm talking about it. And I want you to understand one last point before we move on to the next thing. I want you to understand how valuable it is to be diagnosed. When I had those kidney stones and I didn't know what was wrong and I was having this stomach pain, I had no idea what the issue was. I didn't know if I had an infection. I didn't know if I had kidney stones. I didn't know if it was an appendix. I Googled it because it was on the opposite side of my appendix, but let's just pretend for a second I didn't know. It could have been appendix. It could have been, cancer. It could have been so many different things. I didn't know what it was. It doesn't put someone at ease when they have a problem and they don't know what it is or why it's happening. But when I go to a doctor and they specifically diagnose me, tell me what it is and how to fix it, it's like, it's a huge sigh of relief. Now imagine if you were able to do that with your audience, because I promise you, they're having problems right now that they want solved that you can solve for them. Diagnosing someone inside of content, webinars, video series, messaging is an incredibly powerful tool. And we actually have a whole section on this inside of our program, New Generation Mastery. It is one of the elements. Common enemy and diagnosing is one of the elements of really effective messaging. And again, it's exactly what doctors do. They're masters of great messaging. Now, the question that I get asked a lot is, well, how do I get specific? Honestly, one of the only ways you're going to be able to get specific is to get more experience in what you do. Work with more people. Go practice and master your trade. So our program is called New Generation Mastery, because mastery literally is the key to amazing messaging. But so many people are afraid to go get mastery. They just would rather get another degree or take another course, or just like practice and go through the exercises and never push anything out. The only way you're going to learn these specifics is by testing, tweaking, working with more people. And so you do need that. Okay. So you need to go get that. The second part, an element that I want to go through, is something I call deeper purpose. And I want you to think, for those of you who have kids, you'll totally understand this. How many times do your kids ask you why? Like probably 100 times a day, right? At least, or at least it feels like 100 times a day. Now, what happens when you tell a kid to go clean their room? You tell them what to do. You just tell them, go clean your room. What's the first thing out of their mouth most of the time? Why? Or I don't want to. At least with my kids, that's the most common answer. But they're asking why. And the next thing that I want you to look at is Simon Sinek's famous talk of people don't buy into what you do, they buy into why you do it. Okay? Understanding the why is an important part of your messaging, but I want to take it one step deeper, because we call this the deeper purpose. Now, where most people get messed up is when they give you their why, they usually will tell you a result. Okay. So if I'm a copywriter, they'll say my why is helping more people write impactful copy. And what I would argue is, no, that's not your why. That is literally a result that you bring people. What I want to know is, when 10,000 people have that result, what happens in the world? When I tell my kids to go clean their room, or ask them to go clean their room, and they tell me why, and I do a good job giving them a reason that they can agree with, want to be a part of, a rally behind, then they go and they do it. So for example, if they say, why do I have to go clean my room? And I tell them, because I don't want you to get hurt, and I want your toys to be put away, and I want your toys to not get broken, and we have to put them back in their spots. And that's what I want for you. Well, guess what? The chances of them now rallying behind or agreeing with cleaning up their room changes, because they now have a purpose behind it. There's a purpose and a reason as to why they have to go do that action. No one likes being told what to do, but when it comes to your messaging, a lot of unheard entrepreneurs, which may be you, tell their audience all the time what they should be doing, with never incorporating any why behind it. Delivering a tutorial on here's what you should go do without giving any reasons or counterexamples or stories with it is a very boring way to teach, but also doesn't mean that they're actually going to go do it. So if we start to incorporate deeper purpose in our messaging through connection content, or like little pieces here and there, or even on a podcast episode, you can do little things that explain the why behind why you do what you do. And here's what starts to happen here's what I want to leave you with on this point is, I don't want people to hear me talk and go, oh, that makes sense. I want people that when they hear me talk, they hear my messaging, they experience my messaging, go, oh, that makes sense. Let's do it. And those last 3 words or I guess 2 words. No, that's 3. Can't count. Last 3 words are very important. Let's do it. Because when you tell people what to do, they're likely not going to do it or want to do it. But if you have a deeper purpose, it is something that they can rally behind. So when you say things like, I'm a copywriter and I help people write impactful copy, no one's going to rally behind that message with you. But if you said, I want to create a better world for our kids, and I want to help break down society norms and show them all of these opportunities they have in the world. And I want to do that with you, my clients, because you are all change makers. Well, guess what? Now I have a higher chance of clients, of audience members rallying behind me because I'm no longer helping people write impactful copy. I'm actually changing the world for the next generation. And honestly, that is my deeper purpose. Like I literally want to change the way people parent, the way people communicate. I want to destroy society norms that are causing suffering. And I want to do that with all of you. This is why I'm so passionate about what I do. And this is why I'm so passionate about working with every single one of you listening to this podcast. Because I want to help you go make that impact in the world, because I can't change the world or the society norms on my own. I have to be able to do it with you, because that's what you're here to do, right? And so that's my job to make sure that you do it. That's my deeper purpose. Okay. So remember, people always want to know why. They will rally behind your why, but a why cannot be a result. And it is human nature to want to know why. Why should I do that? Why should I do it this way? Why? And if you never give your audience the why, they're going to be left asking why, but they might be doing it on a subconscious level, which causes them to leave. Now, the third thing that we have to talk about when it comes to messaging and communication is meeting people where they are at. And the best example I can give you, for those of you who are holistic psychologists, Dr. Nicole, if you're fans of her and her content, she is a master at doing this. So when we look at her content, she's not the only person talking about trauma and flight or fight or fawn response or a lot of the things she talks about, right? She's not the only person talking about that. But when you consume her content, have you ever had the thought of, oh my God, that's me, or that's why I do that, or that's why my mom does that, or my mom does do that. Oh, no wonder I act that way. Or she's totally describing me, or she's totally describing my mom or my sister or whatever. Have any of you ever had that feeling, that thought when consuming her content? Now, obviously I know some of you may not consume her content, but what she does a very good job at is taking these clinical terms or these like formal education things that could, in a textbook be quote unquote boring, or unless you're like passionate about it. But let's just say for the common person in the public, like if you're going to go read a textbook about this stuff, it'd probably be very hard read and comprehensive and boring. But what she does is she takes that stuff and she rearranges the language and incorporates symptoms, so that when you read her content, she's not educating you on what the fawn response is or the flight or fight response is. What she's doing is she's communicating in a way that gets you to go, oh my God, that's me. That's why I have that. So instead of saying the flight or fight response is because of your nervous system and goes down to this and that and it triggers your brain this way and blah, 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 what she does is she goes, do you have anxiety every time you go into work? Well, that could be a trauma response or a flight or fight response, which is stemmed from having parents like da, 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 da. And so now what happens is the mind goes, oh my God, I do have anxiety before work. And then you go, oh my God, my parents did do that as a kid. That's the fight or flight response. And this is why it's happening. I get it. And that's the key. So many of us want to teach our audience as if we're teaching from a textbook, but that's, again, boring. And that's coming from your point of view. And sometimes this happens because we want significance. We want people to understand how smart and knowledgeable we are, but it's not about being smart and knowledgeable. It's about being relatable to them and having them on a subconscious automated level go, that's me, when they consume your content. So the more you can meet your audience where they're at, the better the results that you're going to have. And I'm going to relate this back to a story or a scenario like with your kids. When your child is upset and your child is crying, something happened. Maybe it's something that you did, like, maybe let's go back to that example of cleaning the room. You told them to clean the room and you start yelling at them because You just can't stand it anymore. You ask them 5 times, they're not listening. You had a really tough day and they start screaming and crying. And then now you're yelling at them. Well, you're not meeting your audience where they're at with their emotions. And it's very simple. Well, it's a very simple concept. It's hard to do in the moment because obviously you have your emotions and all that stuff going as well. But if you change the conversation from go do this now, to meet them where they're at, which is upset, and you say, oh, I see that you're upset. I'm so sorry that you feel upset. Let me hold you. Let me hug you. Well, guess what? You're meeting them where they're at, which is they are upset. And you're asking them, why are you upset? I notice you're upset. Tell me why you're upset. And it's all focused on where they're at. Upset. They're upset. They're upset. Why are they upset? How come they're upset? Is there anything they can do to not be upset? And you meet them there. You know what starts to happen? Your child starts to calm down. They start to regulate. They start to connect with you more. And what starts to happen is when they start to calm down and connect with you and know that you care, they start to open up. There's rapport being built. Now you can move the conversation to, how can we get that room clean? Or is there a way we can get that room clean? Do you need help? You can obviously change the conversation to however you want it to go. That only happens when you meet them where they're at. And it's the same thing with your audience. This whole online business thing doesn't have to be education, preaching, showing how smart you are, and knowledge all the time. You have to understand you're dealing with human beings. And when you learn to communicate to human beings, and sometimes that means putting your needs and wants to the side to better serve your audience, to better serve your kids, your spouses, your friends. And I promise you, you'll start to get more of what you want. Try it with your spouse. See what happens. It will be the same thing with your audience. I promise you that. One of the reasons why we're able to generate more sales and a real engaged and loyal audience is because I understand you. I understand the problems you're going through. I've been through it. I understand the mistakes, and I show that through my communication. I understand what you're doing and what you're thinking, and I may not understand 100% of it all the time, but I have a pretty good handle on it, and I'm always learning more and evolving with the more people that I work with. But that style of communication isn't just for your audience. It's for your kids and stuff too. Again, remember, all of this comes down to communication. And if you learn how to communicate, it will literally transform your brand and your business. Now, the last element that I have here, and we're going to talk more about this in a future episode as well, is embracing who you are. And this is something that I talk about. We have a whole video actually on this inside the program. But remembering who you are and embracing who you are. And I remember in our last workshop that we just did called Master Your Audience, someone told me, and it might have been in the Facebook group too, I can't remember where it was, but they said something along the lines of, I realized that my biggest problem with messaging is I'm so afraid that's, and putting myself out there, that I'm so afraid someone will ask me a question and I won't know what the answer is. And it's very weird because I have never once had that concern. And I think it's because I've learned over the years how to embrace who I am and love who I am and not make it mean anything when something doesn't go, quote unquote, the right way or the way I want it. And so what I told this person was, sometimes the best answer is, I don't know. And people won't leave. I promise you, people won't leave. I hope all of you listening realize that for me, 99% of what I teach you comes from experience. It is something I've actually done. It's not something I've read in a book. It's not something that I've got a degree in. I don't even have a college degree, but it's not from formal education. It is literally from experience. And if I don't know the answer, it's more of a disservice to you for me to try to make it up than to just tell you, I don't actually know. Great question. I don't actually know. And you have to understand there's a lot of karma attached to this too. When you give people advice and just tell them what to do, and especially if you don't know what the answer is, or you don't know if that's best for them, there's a lot of karma that could come back onto you because of that. So for me, I've had to embrace who I am. And that also means things that I mess up or things that I don't know. And so I'm very careful that anytime I tell someone something and it's not coming from experience, I will tell you up front. I will say, like, look, this is just my best guess. I don't actually know. I've never tried this. So if I were in your shoes, here's what I would do personally. But again, I don't actually know. And I'm very upfront. Now, what this does is it actually builds more trust with your audience. Why? Because you're being honest and you're not making things up. It's you being authentic and real, which is a part of connection. Okay. So if you don't know something or you mess something up, just come out and say it, embrace it. And that's actually one of the number one objection killers that I like to use is when someone has an objection, I always lean into it. When someone says something like, Brandon, I don't have enough time to go through your program. And I say, you know what? I'm glad you said that because this program does take time. Messaging's not easy. That's why not a lot of people will ever get it figured out because they're not willing to put in the time. And if you're really busy right now and you can't dedicate the time to change the messaging in your brand, probably means it's not a big enough problem for you, which means you probably shouldn't get into the program. But if messaging is a big problem for you, then I would recommend trying to find the time. And if you can't do it, then yeah, you're right. This program's not right for you. Or if someone said, Brandon, your program's too expensive, I would say, yeah, you're right. It's not cheap and it is expensive. And the reason why it's expensive is because I want to be able to help you on a deeper level. I don't want 1 million people going through my program because I don't have enough time to actually give 1 million people the support. So what we do is we charge higher prices so that we can actually give you more support without over flooding our system. So we have more margin to be able to have more support. And that better helps you with messaging, which means you're going to actually end up making more because you now have more support. So I'm always leaning into those objections. And what I have found is that the more you lean into yourself, the more you lean into your mistakes, the more you lean into your faults, the more you lean into things that you don't like, and you're honest about these things and just embrace this is who I am, and you love it and you demonstrate that inside of your brand, it actually builds more rapport, more authenticity, more connection, and sometimes in a lot of cases, even more respect from your audience. Because you're real and you're not trying to be this big, significant, huge guru who knows everything. You all have an expertise in something. Share it to the best of your ability. And if something comes up that you don't know, then tell people. They're not going to leave. If you're truly good at what you do and you have a skill or knowledge that can help people, it's your duty to get it out there. So let's just recap real quick. The 4 things that I wanted to cover today, and again, we're going to go deeper into all of this inside of the Master Your Messaging workshop, and obviously inside our program that's going to open up in September. But the lessons here, we told the story about the doctors, and this is all about getting specific and learning how to diagnose your audience. Number 2 is to understand your why, which is not a result. It is a deeper purpose. It's when 10,000 people have the result you want, what happens in the world. Number 3 is to meet your audience where they're at. Remember the example I gave with your kids and they're upset. If you focus more on them where they're at, which is upset, and ask them to talk about it, meet them there, let them know it's okay, let them feel that emotion, you actually start to build a deeper connection, rapport, and trust with them, which then allows the conversation to move to something else a lot easier. So you can do the same thing with your audience, meet them where they're at, which is going to be problems and symptoms and mistakes and actions and a lot of that stuff. The holistic psychologist is amazing at this. It also helps people self-identify. Whoa, I'm the person that Brandon's talking about, or I'm the person that this person's talking about. They're describing me, okay? And then the last one is to embrace who you are. Embrace your mistakes, your faults, the things you don't know. Embrace how smart you are, how talented you are, how skilled you are. Embrace every single element about you because that is the thing that's going to attract the people. You are the light that will attract exactly who you want. And when you don't understand this and you start to bend and change who you are to try to fit what you think the external world wants, you completely lose yourself in your messaging. But when we look at the people who are at the top, they've never lost themselves. When we look at people like Grant Cardone or Gary Vaynerchuk or Mel Robbins, the holistic psychologist, and whoever else, they've all embraced who they are and they're real about it. And they know that some people will like it and some people won't. And the best connections are going to be based off of who you really are. But you have to embrace that first and foremost. So remember that you're smart, beautiful, you're talented, you're skilled, and you can help people. Can't help all of them, but with who you are and the knowledge you have and the skills you have right now, there are people you can help, and you have to embrace that you may not be able to help all of them. And you know what? That's okay. All right. So with that said, we're going to wrap up this episode. If you have not left us a review on iTunes, I would absolutely love if you did that. I'd be so grateful for that. Just lets me know how I'm doing and, kind of gives me that motivation to keep on going with this whole podcast thing. So for those of you who have not registered for Mastering Your Messaging, go ahead and do that. I'm sure the ads are going to play here in a second, and I will see you all on the next episode. Take care, everyone. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.